Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Well, I'm looking at a live feed of Tampa, Florida right now. No flooding yet. The swells are coming in. It's definitely encroaching on mainland. But the wind, those palm trees are horizontal. So it is starting to get real in Florida. Luckily, the storm has been downgraded, and we're hoping, of course, that minimizes any damage and any potential risk to human life or even animal life, because let's be honest, most of the animals are better than half of the humans anyway. So we'll keep you updated, and obviously we'll have a lot to talk about with this tomorrow and some of the efforts and everything else. I also want to remind everybody of some efforts to collect donations and supplies. I think that it's important. I know that we've been criticizing FEMA, and rightfully so, over the past several days. I also think that there is room for people to somewhat defend the federal response in some respects by saying, listen, we can't be all things to all people at all times, and there's going to be problems. The issue is that FEMA is not embracing help, and they're not embracing neighbors helping neighbors, and they're not embracing people who are leaving their homes and organizing efforts and going there to help people in need and to make FEMA's job easier. FEMA is not embracing that. FEMA is seeing that as competition, and that is, frankly, not okay. And that's really the source of great frustration that I have. So I've got a couple of different things, and I would like to go ahead and highlight them for the two major listening markets that are in the audience. I'm going to start with Elkhart, Indiana, because there is an effort that has been organized by some city employees in Elkhart to send supplies over there for the hurricane. And they have a donation drive that is happening at City Hall in Elkhart, Indiana for the survivors of the hurricane. I'm assuming that some of this stuff is eventually going to make its way to Milton efforts as well. But right now, the trucks are going to Tennessee and North Carolina. They are going through an organization that works with this stuff and has partnered with churches and things like that. So what we have is two 26-foot box trucks that have been secured. They're trying to stuff them with supplies. And then they're going to drive one to Irwin, Tennessee. And then one is going to go to Elk Park, North Carolina. There's an Amazon wish list that is involved as well. This is going to go out in my newsletter. I will also post this on X at Casey the host after the show. The Elkhart Fire Union president is also, I guess, helping with some of those contributions, as well as a lot of people of means in the area and influential people. That is in Elkhart, Indiana, the city of Elkhart. So you can handle this. Again, if you want to donate, you can do that at City Hall. The Amazon wish list, again, I will post here soon. The other thing is that I am going to be in Fort Wayne, Indiana, over the next couple of days. Now, tomorrow I'm going to be at the Allen County GOP's Reagan Bean Dinner, and I will be broadcasting my show from there. So if you'll be attending the Bean Dinner, please come up and say hello. I would love to meet you and chat with you, or if we've met before, I'd like to say hello. But then following that, on Friday, I have been asked to stay and do a live remote on Friday, which I will be doing. And my live remote is going to be it's basically an additional effort. Basically, the entire company is now hopped on board with this effort that we had Caleb Blakesley, host of Fort Wayne's Morning News, on a couple of days ago to talk about. where we're going to be sending supplies. The goal, I think, is 20 semi-trailers to the Hurricane Helene victims. And again, I'm assuming that Milton will be a part of that at some point as well. So I'm going to be broadcasting live on Friday at 5130 Executive Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana. 5130 Executive Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Doing the show from there, and also doing some hits with the good folks who are volunteering to get supplies to victims, and also, just going to be out and about in the community, and would love for you to come out, help hurricane victims, also say hello, get a chance to meet me if you're in the Fort Wayne area. I know that there hasn't been as much time there as I had wanted leading up to this. We are working on changing that, by the way. So 5130 Executive Boulevard in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I will be live broadcasting from that location Friday 3 until 6, accepting donations for hurricane victims from Hurricane Helene. And I don't want to speak, before we get anything done with Milton efforts. I know definitely Hurricane Helene. So hopefully you'll come out on Friday and see me there as well. So I'll post both of those efforts at some point today, and they will go out in the newsletter. So make sure you go to btmedia.news, sign up for the free newsletter, and that will be coming in the newsletter here in the next 24 hours. All right. We'll have to give you an update on kind of an interesting story out there. I didn't mention this on the show. I did mention it on the live stream. I was like, hey, did you guys hear about that church in Texas that scared off the jihadi terrorist attack because they were armed? Well, it turns out that is a juicy Smollett story. That's not good. Monday, it was reported that a church security team in a small town in Texas had stopped two men wearing Muslim turbans, presumably Islamic terrorists, who got out of a white van, and at least one of them had a rifle. Now, the story basically went that they were scared off by the armed security team, and they took off and left. Well, according to the Burnett County Sheriff's Office, they did a thorough investigation, and they revealed the details of the incident were, quote, significantly fabricated. Court documents say that 45-year-old Jacob Wayne Tarver, a safety team member at the church at the epicenter, recklessly fired 3 shots at a home and pond near the church. He then lied to law enforcement about the incident. Now, I don't know why. But do we ever really fully understand why on some of these things? Sometimes, it's like I want to get attention, and that's maybe. I don't know. I don't know why he fired the 3 shots, and then I'm assuming the story was a cover-up for it. So, not exactly sure. Tarver allegedly admitted to police that he made up the story about somebody walking near the church and firing warning shots to scare them away. Now, according to the affidavit, Tarver said that he made up the story to embellish what he did and lied to authorities at the scene during a walkthrough investigation and during his polygraph interview. Do people not know that there's going to be like an investigation into this stuff? Do they not know that? Now, here's the thing. This is Texas. This is a pro-Second Amendment story, and he's a white guy at a church. If he makes this up, the news media ain't going to cover for him. If it were the opposite of any of those things, the news media would cover for him, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. His reputation would probably be okay. But it's not, so naturally his life is basically ruined, and justifiably so, by the way. Tarver told authorities that he was embarrassed for not telling the truth. He was then arrested and charged with misdemeanor false report to induce an emergency response, felony tampering or fabricating physical evidence, and felony deadly conduct. Turns out shooting three rounds at a house is, not good. Local sheriff said it best. It affects the community as much as anything. Now, this is Calvin Boyd, the sheriff of Burnett County. There's enough going on in the world. We don't have to have people making things up. It's pretty basic. So if you saw that story that went viral about the Texas church that scared off some jihadis because they were armed, while that has actually happened in real life many times, this case was a juicy Smollett incident, and it was not real. Got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. As a good chunk of people in Florida blasting that song right now, having themselves a hurricane party. Be careful, folks. You know what they say in Florida, if it's not a Cat 4, it doesn't matter. That's, I mean, some paraphrase of that I've heard from every Floridian that I've ever heard. It was a Cat 3 is a party or something like that. Cat 4 is, I don't know what the thing is, but I've known several people in Florida who say that. I don't advocate for that, but I also don't know anything about hurricanes as it is starting to impact Florida right now. Luckily, not as strong as it was yesterday and as strong as people feared. And hopefully the damage will be minimized, and hopefully there will not be any loss of life. We will keep you updated as those reports roll in. Tim Walz has once again done something that a lot of people are saying could probably hurt the Kamala Harris campaign. I don't know if the left is aware of this at all, but generally speaking, most people like the Electoral College. There are small pockets of people that don't like it. Most people who don't like the Electoral College can't even explain to you what it is or what it does and why it's important. I think one of the most laughable and yet probably the most common thing that I run into with people that I have a discussion about the Electoral College with, they always say, somebody in Wyoming shouldn't be able to get 3 times as many votes as somebody in New York because they get 3 times more voting power than people in New York. No, they don't. That's a stupid thing to say, and you're an idiot for saying it, but it is a talking point that rolls around all over the anti-Electoral College circles, and unfortunately, they just don't know enough about it to even be able to articulate how stupid they sound when they say something like that. I had a guy once who came into the machine shop I was working at, and he said that, and I looked at him and I said, what about apportionment? And then he just kind of stared at me, a little bit like Tim Walz stares into the camera with his eyes all big, not knowing what to say next. And he didn't have a response. I'm pretty sure he looked up apportionment after he left, but I don't know that he actually comprehended what apportionment was. So Tim Walz now has Kamala Harris's campaign doing damage control after he let slip that he wants to get rid of the Electoral College. Okay. Let me ask this. The left says Donald Trump is a tyrant, right? Okay. The left, including Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, say that Donald Trump is a danger to democracy, right? Okay. They all say that Donald Trump would make himself a dictator from day one. I'm quoting Joe Biden, right? What is the tool that was put in our government to prevent a tyrant and a dictator from rising to power? What is, Morgan, what is the tool? Trick question. Yes, the Electoral College. So if Tim Walz is out there saying that Donald Trump will be a dictator from day one and that he's a tyrant, they'll throw all their political opponents in jail. They'll throw journalists in jail. Remember, MSNBC said that. They'll do all of these horrible things if Donald Trump gets into the White House. And the one thing that is most responsible for preventing a tyrant from rising to power in the United States is the Electoral College. So if you're saying that Trump is a tyrant and a dictator, why would you then want to remove the thing that prevents a tyrant and a dictator? I'll wait. Okay, what is one of Casey's rules about leftists? Everything that they believe contradicts another one of their beliefs. This is a doozy. Now, I'm not surprised. This guy, he really loves himself some communist China. I'm not surprised. Not surprised. At a recent fundraiser with fellow Chinese communist enthusiast Gavin Newsom, Tim Walz said, "I think all of us know the Electoral College needs to go. We need a national popular vote. That is something. But that's not the world we live in. Okay. I know you don't trust Casey. So I'll tell you what. How about if I get a former member of the Federal Election Commission, Hans von Spakovsky? What if I just read you his words? The Electoral College is a very carefully considered structure the framers of the Constitution set up to balance the competing interests of large and small states. It prevents candidates from winning an election by focusing only on high-population urban centers, ignoring smaller states and the more rural areas of the country and places that progressives and media elites consider flyover country. Yes. Now remember, it used to be Republicans talking about getting rid of the Electoral College because they had the popular vote. Now the Democrats have the popular vote, and the Democrats want to get rid of it. And at the end of the day, all it means is that places like Indiana are irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I've gone over the numbers many, many times in the past. I've even gone over ways that I might even be willing to consider as a potential change to the current Electoral College system and how that might work out while still protecting the states. I don't really actually advocate for that, but I'm just saying things that would be better and a little bit more feasible than abolishing the Electoral College altogether. But it is interesting watching leftists go out there and say Donald Trump is a tyrant and a dictator and simultaneously say we need to get rid of the one thing that prevents tyrants and dictators from coming to power in this country. I should say the one thing that is codified into law, not the one thing if you catch my drift. You glockety glock, and all of that. Got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Well, another media fact check kind of didn't age very well. I mean, this tends to happen with them. There aren't that many media fact checks, air quote, of course. I'm just too lazy to lift my hands for the live stream. There's a lot of media fact checks out there that just do not stand up to history. Now, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this story yesterday. And I'm like, wow, I kind of remember that being a thing. And I thought about all of the other times that this was a thing as well. And this materialized and how the media back then fact-checked it. And then the times before that where the media fact-checked it and so on and so forth. Do you remember when Donald Trump said that they were not doing a proper vetting process of people who are coming in from Afghanistan? You remember that? Now, there's a lot of people who helped us in Afghanistan that we should get out. And we left a lot of them behind with that disastrous pullout. That I can make so many jokes about me saying that just now, but I'm not going to because I'm trying to be a better person in 2024. The disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. We left Americans behind. Then they told you they didn't. We left Afghan allies, interpreters, and others who risked everything to help us. We left them behind. But we allowed a bunch of people who are not vetted to get over here. And Donald Trump, well, he said that. And one example, CNN. GOP claims Afghan refugees are arriving unvetted. That's not true. Now, before it was the Afghan refugees, it was the Syrian refugees. Remember that? And who ended up being most of the Syrian refugees? most of the Syrian refugees were not Syrian. Many of them were ISIS. Remember the video of ISIS recruiters and operatives inside the refugee camps talking about all the instructions and how to not get caught when you're getting into the United States and into Europe? Remember all of that? Remember how many terrorist attacks we have thwarted since then from those people? And Trump and other Republicans said we weren't properly vetting these refugees from Afghanistan. And we weren't. And they had previously made this claim and claimed it was a fact check. There was this really great moment. I mean, it's a great moment for Ted Cruz. It's a terrible moment for everybody else. But where Ted Cruz, who had been eviscerated for pointing out that they were not actually doing background checks on these Syrian refugees, and he had prominent officials who were responsible for doing those background checks admit in a Senate hearing that they were not doing the background check and the vetting process that they were outwardly telling all of you that they were doing, and the media was out there telling you, we are 100% vetting all of these people. You even had all of these Hollywood celebrities out there doing these video montages of how racist it was to not let the Syrian migrants and refugees in. Their country is being destroyed. Again, most of the Syrian refugees that went to Europe and came here were not even Syrian. It was used as a migratory plot. Some people were just economic refugees. They just wanted to come here. Some were terrorists. And he got him to admit in a Senate hearing that they, in fact, were not doing the background checks that they and the news media were telling you they were doing. And then the news media killed that story. But there were plenty of members of the GOP and Donald Trump and others who pointed out, hey, this is a real problem. We are not vetting these people properly. And the news media said that that isn't true, that it was a lie. And then breaking news yesterday, 6:07 p.m. The Justice Department has charged an Afghan man with planning an Islamic State-inspired attack on large crowds on Election Day in the United States. Now, Tawhidi, who arrived in the United States in September of 2021, had taken steps in recent weeks to advance his attack plans, including ordering an AK-47 rifle, actually several of them, liquidating his family's assets, and buying one-way tickets for his wife and child to travel home to Afghanistan. The arrest comes as the FBI confronts heightened concerns over the possibility of extremist violence on U.S. soil, with Director Christopher Wray of the FBI telling the Associated Press in August that he was hard-pressed to think of a time in his career where so many different kinds of threats are all elevated at once. Now that's kind of strange, because you were told that that is not a real concern. Now you throw in there that there's over 400 people that were encountered at the southern border who were on the terrorist watch list this last year. That's pretty significant. You throw in there that there are now hundreds of thwarted terrorist plots in the United States over the past year or two. The article is buried in my show prep. I had it yesterday. I do apologize, but was actually going to talk about it yesterday. Hundreds of them. So we continue to have the same problem over and over. They continue to deny it over and over. They continue to tell you that when you call it out, you're not only wrong and lying, but also a racist over and over. And then you give it just a little bit of time, and you end up getting proven right. They get proven wrong over and over, and they never once acknowledge that they screwed up. And every time we have one of these scenarios, I just sit here and I watch everybody do what they're dutifully supposed to do. Watch all of the NPCs get their marching orders from the Democratic Party, and they run out there and they do all of this stuff that the Democratic Party tells them to do. They say all of the things that the Democratic Party tells them to say. It doesn't matter that they were proven wrong the last time. There's no pause. There's no shame. There's no hesitation. Just an automatic jump to do exactly what their masters tell them to do. They never, not one time, actually stop and realize that they're the ones that continuously push narratives that are false. Not once. I just am continuously perplexed by that, because you have to assume that not all of them are paid operatives or, really invested all that much, right? You have to just assume that a lot of it's just got to be like dumb people just willing to go along, and they never. I'm forced to kind of just tell myself, the truth is, Casey, the vast majority of them never realized that they got debunked and they got proven wrong, which is why you keep running into idiots repeating stuff that was debunked years ago, including members of the press. And I have to remind myself of all the members of the news media that I've had at all sorts of different formats that they all say the same thing. I never leave my own network's ecosystem on news. I never go outside of my own network's supplies of information to figure out what's actually happening around me. Everything that I get is hand curated to me by the people who run my company. And I have heard that from more than one person. And honestly, it starts to make sense. If you won't leave your own little bubble to go look for information, you never know that you were proven wrong. Now, with some of these folks, it is undeniable. And they just don't care because they're actually operatives and that's what they do. But I'm talking about for the average person out there that might be rolling around on the internet and saying this stuff. And, maybe you don't like Republicans. Maybe you don't like Donald Trump or anything else. But at some point, can you just ever allow yourself to admit that, you know what? He was right about that. They were right about that. Maybe Donald Trump isn't all evil when he's allowing these linemen who are going to be working with Hurricane Milton to be staying in his hotels for free. Maybe I don't like his policies. Maybe I don't like the way he conducts himself online, but maybe he's not evil. And I don't know, folks, with the derangement and the tribalism that we have, I honestly have no idea if that's even a possibility anymore. Be perfectly honest. Got more coming up. You're tuned into The Burning Truth. All right, so I was slightly off of my numbers. I was shooting from the hip right before the commercial break. I apologize about that. I found the report that I was talking about from earlier in the week. More than 50 jihadist cases in 29 states show a persistent terror threat. A new report published by the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security states that foreign jihadist networks and homegrown violent extremism represent a persistent terror threat to America. It identifies more than 50 cases in 29 U.S. states between April of 2021 and September 2024, including dozens of attempts to provide material support to Islamic designated foreign terrorist organizations, such as ISIS, Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, etc., with individuals receiving military-type training from ISIS and Hezbollah and committing fraud. Now, in those states include Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. So I will put that report in the Daily Show Prep at btmedia.news. Deadspin. Deadspin is almost as bad of a publication as the Indianapolis Star. Almost. Like, they're not quite wipe your backside after eating Taco Bell for 3 days straight with the fire sauce. They're not quite that bad. They're more like line your birdcage bad. The Indy Star is definitely what you use to wipe up the messiest types of bowel movements that you could have. But an update in the case where they decided to attack a 9-year-old child who was minding his own business and enjoying a football game. Of course, we told you about that story when it happened. It became national news. Deadspin blamed and accused this 9-year-old kid of blackface and of cultural appropriation when he was at a Chiefs game wearing the Chiefs headdress. Now, you should know the Chiefs headdress isn't actually a headdress associated with any tribe. It is made up. And when the Chiefs created the headdress, they got approval from Native American tribes that it was not offensive to their cultures or people in any way. This 9-year-old kid minding his business. Now, of course, the kid doesn't have blackface on. Half of his face was black and the other half was red. Why? Because the team is the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why. Did that prevent Deadspin from relentlessly attacking the 9-year-old child? No, of course it didn't. Deadspin just doubled down on it. So Deadspin lied about the kid, then got called out, proven that they lied, still continue to attack the kid. Well, naturally, there's a legal case involved. And a Delaware judge has just refused to dismiss a defamation lawsuit against Deadspin over the article accusing the NFL fan and his family of racism because he wore traditional Kansas City Chiefs attire. The lawsuit was filed by California residents Raul Armenta Jr. and his wife Shannon on behalf of themselves and their son Holden, who attended a game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders last November. Now, it still sounds weird, even though they moved to my hometown. Like, it sounds weird saying Las Vegas Raiders. According to the lawsuit, Holden, referred to in the lawsuit as H.A., is a Chiefs fan who also loves his family and their Indian heritage. Okay? Now, they are Native American. We actually talked about that when it happened. He was, of course, accused of being a white kid, but they are Native American. He wore a Chiefs jersey to the game with his face painted half red, half black, and a costume Native American headdress. Holden got the opportunity to pose with Raiders cheerleaders and also shown briefly during the television broadcast of the game with his red and black face paint visible. An Associated Press photographer who captured the image of Holden showing both sides of the boy's showing that both sides of the boy's face was painted. However, using a screenshot that showed only the side of Holden's face painted black, Deadspin writer Karen Phillips, because yes, he is a Karen, published an article the next day accusing the boy of being a racist. Specifically, he said the NFL needs to speak out against the Kansas City Chiefs fan in blackface. Native headdress was the headline of the article. It's also what it was on social media because, again, Karens are going to Karen. So Deadspin tried to get this thing tossed, and the judge said, no, it may proceed. I'm hoping this destroys their whole organization, just like Gawker went down with the Hulk Hogan stuff. I don't think I'm going to get that lucky, but boy, do I hope it happens. All right, folks, I'm going to be heading to Fort Wayne. There won't be any live streams on Rumble the rest of the week as a result of the Fort Wayne stuff. I do apologize about that, but privacy and whatnot. So look forward to talking to all of you tomorrow.
Podcasts by Federated Media.